For this project, I broke my needle not once, not twice, but 3 times. In this video, I'm making something that I have never ever attempted to make before, and by the end of this video, you will understand why my sewing machine basically gave up on me 3 times. So if you watched my fabric stack video, then you'll remember I said that I wanted to work through some of the fabric that I've been hoarding, and one of them being the tablecloth with cute little duck prints. And honestly, I've been waiting for the right moment to work on this, and I think I found it. Because my nephew's wedding ceremony is coming up, I decided quite ambitiously that I want to make him a quilted jacket as one of his gifts. Yes, it is boiling hot in Europe at the moment, and we having this crazy heat wave. I mean, I've got my fan off at the moment and I'm sweating. But I feel like because of this heat wave, the cold is going to feel even colder than usual. I used a pattern from Quite Life Farm and her tutorial in YouTube. The tutorial itself is actually pretty clear. It's really well explained. I did struggle at few points though, so I'm not sure if it's the tutorial or me. You can be the judge of that. So quick rundown of everything I used for this project. Obviously the main fabric, lining fabric, batting, some bias tape. Although actually I didn't use bias tape, but you'll find out what happened in the project later on. I also used obviously fabric scissors, 2 threads, one invisible, one white, so that it matches everything up. I obviously used a sewing machine, a few sewing machine needles clearly, and also used a hand sewing needle because I did hand sew some of the bits, and I also used a loop turner, but it's not essential. So first step, and honestly this really helped, was to trace your pattern onto a tracing paper first. This made such a massive difference when it actually came to placing the pattern pieces onto the fabric, because with print like this, placement really makes a difference. And that's exactly what I did next. I had a proper play around with the layout. I ended up putting the big duck scene across the back panel, 2 smaller ducks on the front, and then this lovely blue border with little flowers detail running along the sleeve. I did mess one of the sleeve placement slightly. It's not the end of the world, and I don't know. If you notice, then yes, I know. For the batting and lining, I didn't bother cutting them right to the edge of the pattern because you're sewing all 3 layers together anyway. The fabric sort of shifts about a bit regardless, so there was no point in being precious about it at this stage. Then came the actual quilting lines. I always go for simple horizontal lines. I just prefer the look, and sewed the whole lot together using transparent thread so it wouldn't compete with the print. I marked my lines with yellow chalk, which is why everything looks a bit yellow at this point in the video. It does brush up, so don't worry. Once all the quilting lines were done, I trimmed away all the excess fabric to get clean pattern pieces. I just wanted to show how cute these turned out. Like, this would be the front bit, this would be the back bit, and these are the sleeves. The only thing is I ended up messing up the inner fabric for one of the sleeves. So this one is fine, so because it would go something like this. Whereas this one, the stripes are in the wrong direction. Still would be reversible, I think. It just means the pattern would be a bit off. But the front bit of the main fabric is so cute, and it was the time to actually sew the pieces together. And honestly, I've been dreading this part because I wasn't sure if my machine could actually sew through all those layers. In my defense, I started this project at 8 p.m. By the time I got to the stage, it was about 1 a.m. Not my finest decision making window, but here we are. The shoulders actually went fine. Machine handled it, which I was a bit surprised by as there was multiple layers and it was pretty thick. Then I went straight into attaching the sleeve, which again wasn't actually that hard, but it was only once the sleeve was on that it hit me. I was supposed to do the bias tape on the shoulders before attaching the sleeve. Now it's going to be a bit more complicated than I hoped for. I wasn't going to unpick it, and I will show you later how I dealt with that. But thinking I was being clever, I unpicked some bias tape that was already stitched onto the tablecloth, reckoning I could reuse it and save myself some time. Except once it was all unpicked, it turned out that the tape simply wasn't wide enough to wrap around all the layers I now had. So I came up with a new plan. I used the blue border strip from the tablecloth instead. It's not cut on the bias, so it's got none of that lovely stretch and flexibility that a proper bias have, but I love the blue pattern and the contrast it gave on the main and outer fabric, so I went ahead with it. Applying it was, and I cannot stress this enough, a struggle. So the reason I didn't unpick the sleeve was not just because it was such a long process, but also because I couldn't find my seam ripper after I unpicked the bias tip from the tablecloth. Anyways, I probably should have watched a few tutorials before diving in, but it was 2 a.m. at this point and I was not exactly thinking clearly. The absolute hardest bit was where the shoulder tape needed to meet the sleeve tape. Because the sleeve was already attached, I had to sort of Frankenstein the two together by hand. I'm not entirely convinced it's the correct solution, and it's definitely not the neatest join in the world, but I hand sewed it slowly and carefully so it holds up fine, even if it's not picture perfect. So the next day I sat back at it at 8 p.m. again, and I don't know what it is with me and starting projects right at the end of the day. Anyways, I carried on with the border tape, and this time around I actually had a rough idea of what I was doing, which made an enormous difference. Once that was done, it was time to sew the sides, and this is the point where it genuinely started to look like a jacket for the first time, and I was getting the sewing high. Then finally the border tape around the outer edges. This happened the following day in the actual daylight when I was not running on zero sleep, and it showed. The edges came out really well, the corners aren't perfect, and if you look closely you'll spot it, but honestly, unless you're properly inspecting it, it looks great in my humble opinion. I didn't want to mess about with buttons, so I went with ribbon ties to close the jacket instead. And with that, it's done. I am so happy with how this turned out, and it's reversible. Genuinely can't wait for my nephew to be actually big enough to wear it. Finger crossed it's this winter, but if not, next year. It's a little bit stiff around the arms just from the tape on sleeves, so I really hope it's comfortable enough for him once he's in it. But like for the first ever jacket, first ever taller garment, and 3 broken needles considered, I'll take it. I just feel like baby clothes are like so adorable to make, and it takes up so much less fabric as well than making an adult garment. Like my lining fabric was a leftover fabric that I didn't actually have much. I also feel like I can make a quilted jacket for myself now. Anyways, we'll end this on this high note. I'll see you in next one. Bye.